Okay, always good to have some time with Congressman Dan Kildee. And Congressman, it's been a little over a year now since you first announced that you would not seek election to another term in Congress. I know you were fairly comfortable with that decision, but I have to ask, over the course of this last year, did you ever have second thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people have asked. No, I have not. Mainly because, for my family and the people closest to me, they knew back in 2011 when I announced that I was running for Congress that it was only going to be for a season of my life. I'd kind of planned on around 10 years. It's 12 years now. So I came into this knowing that about at this point in my life, I'd want to start that next chapter. I'll miss some of this, the friendships with my staff and with my colleagues. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve my hometown and the people of Mid-Michigan in Congress, and I'm so grateful to my constituents for putting your trust and your faith in me to represent you for the last 12 years. I'll miss being a part of this institution, but that is vastly outweighed by the ability to be at home, close to family, continuing to do important work without having to suspend my life, for 3 weeks out of every month and come to a place that's important, but not home. Washington is not home. Flint is. So I have no regret.
You talk about the important work. I'm wondering what you see over 12 years there on the Hill as the high point of that time and what you see as the low point.
Yeah, I mean, the high point actually was that outgrowth of a low point. The Flint water crisis is a low point for that community, for my hometown. But the ability to be in Congress at that moment and to navigate a divided Congress, I was in the minority in the House, to navigate that and get $170 million committed to help my hometown recover, that was, from a legislative standpoint, a big achievement. Bringing home the prisoners from Iran, including Amir Hekmati from Flint, that was an important achievement. The child tax credit, those are all big things that, I helped write the Inflation Reduction Act, the investment in solar and electric vehicles. Those are all high points. The low point isn't too hard to figure out. It was January 6th. You and I have spoken about this over the years. That attack on our Capitol, that willingness to try to overturn a free and fair election, the position I found myself in, trapped in the Capitol gallery, in the House gallery. I got behind the little half wall that separates the gallery from the floor of the House and, stayed there until the situation was cleared enough where we could find our way off the gallery. That will not only be a low point in terms of my congressional career, but my professional career. That's a low point, and I think it's a low point for the country as well.
Absolutely. And I still to this day greatly appreciate the time that you gave us on that day, that evening, as you were really sort of it was all just so brutally fresh that you took the time to speak with us about what was happening there. You're passing the baton, so to speak, to State Senator Kristen McDonald Rivet, Congresswoman-elect McDonald Rivet. How do you feel about that? And what advice are you sharing with her as you pass that baton?
Well, I feel good about it because I helped her get elected. It's easy as a Democrat, just to be candid. It's easier for me to leave knowing that I was able to help a person that shares my values and my perspective on government to succeed me. My advice that I've given her is the same advice I've given to anybody who's come to Congress, or frankly, any other office. And that is just be yourself. Don't think you have to play some sort of a role. The people chose you because of who you are. Don't change that, number one. And second, take care of your constituents. People call congressional offices because they can't get help from anywhere else. It's almost like the last call they make. Maybe my congressman or congresswoman can help me. That kind of work is really front and center in terms of the responsibility of a member of Congress. But it's mostly just to be yourself, to be the person that the people chose. Don't change once you get here. Don't feel like you have to sort of adapt to this environment. Force this environment to adapt to you.
You're in a temporary office now because you've already moved out of the one that you had been occupying. In these final days for you, because I would imagine once Congress recesses for the holidays, that's kind of like sign or die for the 118th. Is there any priority legislation that you are still working to get across the finish line in these final days?
Yes, there is. I mean, first of all, it's getting a spending bill through the Congress so the government doesn't shut down, and hoping, whether it's this one or the one that will happen right after the first of the year, that includes a lot of the priorities that I've fought to get included in the federal budget. That's one for sure. But there is a specific piece of legislation. It's called the Susan Muffley Act. It's the bill that would restore the pensions of Delphi salaried retirees, those people who unfairly lost their pension or had it cut dramatically as a result of the General Motors Delphi bankruptcy. And it's a long shot, like, to be honest with you, but we don't give up. So we're still pushing Congress to include that. And even if we don't get it done, I want to make sure that the United States Congress understands this priority is not going away, and we're going to continue to fight for it.
I would imagine that the Congresswoman-elect has pledged to carry on that fight if it doesn't happen in this Congress.
She has. She and I have talked a lot about this particular issue, but others as well. And I know that if somehow we're not able to get it done, because as I acknowledge, it's probably a long shot because we're not doing a full year budget. She knows how important this is to the people that I and she will soon represent. So I'm sure it'll be something she'll focus on.
As a Democrat, obviously, you're disappointed in how the election turned out last month. As you prepare to leave Washington, what do you see? We hear those on the other side who say that the president-elect has this great mandate, this wide mandate. But when you look at the margins, especially there on Capitol Hill, they're still razor thin. Do you see it as they have a true mandate to do things? And how do you see Washington playing out over the next 2 years and then 4 years under the Trump administration?
Yeah, well, I think you raise a good point because people want to characterize it as some sort of massive mandate election. In the House of Representatives, we actually picked up a net gain of seats. It's really unusual for that to happen, but across the country, we now have an even thinner margin. We're even closer to a majority in the House of Representatives in the next Congress than we were in this one. So I don't think that constitutes a mandate. But here's what I'll say about a mandate. The only mandate any of us have is the one that we swear an oath to on January 3rd of every odd-numbered year after an election, and that is to support and defend the Constitution. And you wouldn't think we would have to even mention that in these times, 248 years into our independence. But we have to remind ourselves that we're governed by a set of rules that we mutually agreed to, the Constitution of the United States, and we have to take special care to adhere to that. The issues come and the issues go. Our fundamental responsibility is to preserve this democracy. And it's probably at greater risk now, Mike, in some ways, than it has been in a century. And so I just encourage all of my colleagues. The issues are important. There's no particular mandate other than the one that we've all agreed to pursue, and that is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And so the transition for you now is you're coming home and you're going to take over as president and CEO of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. Talk a little bit about that. What are your plans and what are your goals for the foundation going forward?
Well, I'm really excited about it. I'm coming home, and at the foundation, they've made, a priority to try to find ways to improve life for the people in the greater Flint area through, supporting a whole array of programs, neighborhoods, health disparity, childhood education, after-school programming, leadership in the community. I'm excited about it because the issues that the Community Foundation has been focusing upon are very similar to the issues that I've been working on in Congress. So, in some ways, I feel like my job won't really change that much. I'll have a different toolbox, a different set of tools that I can use to apply to the community's challenges, and a great staff at the Community Foundation that's ready to be a part of this team. The big difference for me is it's a 13-minute drive from my house rather than having to fly to another part of the country for 3 or 4 days every week. I'm really excited about it. It's a chance to continue to do good things, do good work, surrounded by good people in a community that I love.
And from where your office was in Flint, you're across the street and one block down.
That's right. That is exactly right. I'll be able to look out my new office window and see my old office window.
Absolutely. Listen, it's been a joy and a pleasure to be able to talk to you about what's going on Capitol Hill, what you've been doing for the community here in Flint, and by extension for the entire country. And I greatly appreciate the time that you've always granted us in the best of times and the worst of times to help keep the folks here informed. So congratulations on a great run in Congress, and we wish you well in this new endeavor with the Community Foundation of Flint. I'm sure we'll get to talk a lot and maybe even more frequently doing that.
I hope so. I've enjoyed these conversations over the years, and I look forward to seeing you in person when I come home.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to you, Congressman Kildee. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.